Hello, welcome to part 1 of our Kunimitsu Basics Guide. Reminder that this is game version 4.2. This first part will be essential tools, which will include essential moves, grabs, punishers, and basic combos. In part 2, we'll talk about common game plan elements and recommend some players to watch, as well as cap it off with a character summary. For beginners, note the resource links in the video description below. I've included several you should check out. Be sure to at least learn notation so that you can follow along. With that, let's talk about Tekken's lone Kitsune. As usual, we'll save Kuni's stances until part 2. This includes her back turn and full crouch while standing game. These are definitely important for her and deserve a longer discussion. Kuni has a nice little assortment of jab options. The standard 1-2 is there, but it also has 2 follow-up options for more cover, one of which can cancel into back turn, but you also have a safe high mid in 1-1. This has 3 follow-up options of its own, 2 of which are safe, and a transition to cat along with those. None of this is oppressive since there are answers to all of that, but employing a good mix will bolster your jab game. Another safe high mid option is 2-2, but it's also a string with up to 5 hits, most of which are safe, albeit highs, and with transitions to your stances. 2-2 1+2 goes to cat, 2-2-2 forward goes to set, and 2-2-2-2-2 back goes to back turn. Or that last hit can be used as a counter hit threat since it will trade with jabs on block and it's only -10. So although the string is normally just used for poking with 2-2, which tracks to her weak side, there's still stuff you can do beyond that. 3 is a quick, safe homing tool. It is high, so there is duck risk, but it's a nice +7 on hit. 3-4 is also a safe knockdown natural combo, but the second hit is a counter hit launch by itself, so although standing 3 is -9, the threat of the launch will give you some of that back. 4-2 is a safe I-12 natural combo. Both hits are high, but the first hit jails, so no duck risk if it gets blocked. Leaves you in back turn at +6 on hit, -3 on block, which is still okay, but we'll talk about back turn more later. Forward 4 is a safe I-15 mid knee poke. It's not the greatest thing ever by itself since it's -8 on block and -1 on hit, but it's very common for the set transition, in which case it becomes 0 on block and a big +7 on hit. We'll of course talk about set in part 2. Forward 3+4 is an I-18 homing attack, knockdown splat on hit, and a counter hit launcher. Very safe at -2, so still some setup potential on block. It also low crushes thanks to the jump, although it's a high, which limits the strength of that. Still a very solid homing move. Down forward 1 is an I-13 mid poke, -2 on block, +5 on hit, so close but not quite as good as a generic, especially with range, but you have a couple of scary follow-ups to make that better. Down forward 1-3 is a safe counter hit combo, and if they swing into it, the second hit is a counter hit launcher. It is duckable, but you also have down forward 1-2-2, which is all mid. The 2s are punishable, but they represent a knockdown splat option for duckers or challenges. You have to be careful of using those options, but they can hurt a lot if your opponent isn't respecting them. Down forward 2 is an I-15 mid launcher, -12 on block and a bit more range than the standard down forward 2, but it still doesn't launch crouchers unless counter hit. So nothing to abuse in the neutral, but a very important punisher and launch threat. Note that forward 1+2 is probably better at the wall and it's slightly faster, but also riskier on block. Down forward 4 is a safe I-12 mid poke, just your standard generic down forward 4, so nothing fancy, just a nice quick little poke. Down forward 3+4 is an I-17 double mid, very safe at -2 and has the option to go back turn. Not much tracking to it, but it's otherwise a very simple, easy to use tool. Down 1 is an I-19 power mid, very safe at -3, +5 on hit and a knockdown on counter hit. Can recover full crouch as well for some full crouch mind games. Again, not much tracking, but another simple, easy tool. Generic toe kick, I-12, high crushing, great tracking, and the -2 on hit is still fine for some setups. Kuni is pretty limited on low pokes, so your only other options would be down back 3-3, which is a terrible -7 on hit, although it does have a safe mid follow-up you can play with, and down back 4, which is better frame-wise, but does very little damage and doesn't high crush. So your toe kick will still be a prominent element of your game for controlling space and pace. Down back 2 is a safe I-13 mid poke that recovers full crouch, +7 on hit, so very useful. Down back 2-4 is a safe mid-mid natural combo that you can use as well. Not as good on block or hit, but still a chunky combo. There is a third knockdown hit that's also safe, but it's interruptible if down back 2-4 is blocked, and the reward isn't crazy high, so it's not as common. Back 2 is an I-17 mid power crush, knockdown splat on hit, and homing, but also -13 on block. It won't light the world on fire, but it's also her only power crush and covers a lot of options. Few different approach options here. Running 2 and 3 are more traditional, running 2 being significantly faster but a high. Running 3 also low crushes, it can splat, whereas running 2 won't. She unfortunately doesn't have a generic running option to get plus frames on block, so instead you have these. Forward 4-2 deserves an honorable mention since it hits grounded and will launch on counter hit, so very good on Oki. It's not terrible at -10 and will knock down splat, but you probably have better options if your opponent is standing, including QCF 1+2, which is safe and the same speed and also rangy. Kuni has a lot of approach tools and these are just part of that kit. Speaking of approach, we must also talk punishers, of which Kuni has an interesting assortment. All of these are unsafe, forward 4 and crouch dash 2 in particular, but they offer solid reward. Crouch dash 2 is a straight up launcher and quick at I-14. Forward 4-4-2 isn't a launch, but it's a powerful natural combo that can splat and a whopping I-9. You can't buffer the directions, but with some practice you can punish -10 or -11 from standing and even -12 from full crouch with it. It just takes some practice to do that and perhaps a little bit of anticipation, but it can be supremely powerful. QCF2 is another fast mid option at I-13, only -12, so a bit safer than those first two and still a knockdown splat. And then lastly you have QCF1, which is very similar to Noctis's forward 2, very quick at I-15 and does go the full length of the screen. The Oki isn't quite as good, but it forces your opponent to play very tight at range. It's also the safest of this bunch, being -11 when closer, but actually completely safe at longer ranges since she doesn't dash fully to the opponent. If placed well, these are all very scary options. Another Noctis-esque move, up 2, is safe, I-13, +5 on hit, and a chunky hit throw on counter hit. Unlike Noctis, no full launch on counter hit and not quite the same preferential block situation, but Kuni lacks a Magic 4 type move, so this is kind of the best you have there. Up 4-3 is an unsafe I-15 launch knee, more or less the prototypical hop kick type move. She also has up 4-3-4, which is basically the same thing, just 2 knees. The juggle changes slightly, but it's still -13. Either way, it's your scary low crush threat, no different than a hop kick. Up forward 4 is a safe I-24 low crushing knockdown power mid, very similar to an orbital, it just doesn't give an easy launch, so if you want a low crush but don't want to take the block risk of up forward 3, this is an alternative. Note that it is possible to pick up launch with a micro dash into crouch dash 2, but this is very difficult. Up 3+4 is an I-39 mid launcher. It is a low crush, but due to the slower speed, it's probably not best as an alternative to up forward 3 or up forward 4. However, it's a solid pressure tool thanks to the +5 on block, and it can hit grounded, so it's also useful as an Oki tool. It's not anything you'll spam, but if placed well, it can be really good, just like Yoshi's. Sidestep 2 is a safe, quick mid poke with the option to go back turn and a follow-up for more cover, which is only -10, so not terrible. Sidestep 2 is a really common tool for getting to back turn. Sidestep 4 is a knockdown low that's much riskier but deserves mention for 2 reasons. One, it can serve as a knowledge check to help you find out what your opponent knows about Kuni. Second, at I-24, it's definitely fast enough to mix other stuff in to mess with your opponent's defensive timing. For instance, up forward 4 is the same speed, so sidestep to up forward 4 is a very simple, basic mix-up option. Just be sure to use it cautiously. Kuni's Rage Drive is a quick long-range mid that goes to a chunky hit throw if it connects. Minimum +6 on block, but up to +11. The reward leaves something to be desired unless you get a wall splat, but thanks to the range and speed, it's still a powerful threat that doubles as a pressure tool. Not much here for Kuni, unfortunately. Aside from the normals, she has a command 1 and 1+2 break, but that doesn't represent much of a mix-up. The command 1 can be sneaky sometimes since she leads with her foot, and you can do it from a dash, but it still has limits against good grab breakers. It's also the only grab that she has that side switches on break, although your positioning after is a bit goofy, so beware. Regardless, neutral grabs won't be a big focus, although back turn grabs are definitely useful, but we'll talk about that in part 2. This brings us to the end of part 1. You should now know all the basic tools that you need to get started and play some matches. In part 2, we'll talk more about other aspects of Kuni's game plan to help put it all together. Expect that here in a couple of days. And with that, thanks for checking out this video. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications here on YouTube so that you get alerted when a new video drops. Twitch and Twitter links are also down below. Lastly, huge thank you to our patrons. The more support we have, the more resources we can devote to channel content. So again, I can't thank everyone enough for considering supporting the Patreon. Stay safe, everyone, and we'll catch you next time.